Today, we look at the tragic life and works of Francisco Goya. Don't worry, it definitely includes the nightmare fuel. It's actually worse than you think. Romanticism. Some of these artists exist as heroes to me personally. I know that may sound dramatic. I prefer theatrical. But the Romantic art movement cropped up in direct opposition to neoclassicism and the centuries-long held ideals of rationality and order that we've seen in every other video so far. If you watched until the end of my last video, linked below, you will know that it is a relief for me to be in this era of the Western canon. I finally feel like we've gotten over the hump of realism and we are getting into the good stuff. As theartstory.org puts it, sense and emotions, not simply reason and order, were equally important means of understanding and experiencing the world, according to the Romantics. Romanticism was not only an art movement either. We find this movement in music, literature, and architecture, to name a few. And this was not only a shift in painting style, as we had seen before, but instead this was a shift in the mindset of what spaces art should occupy in our world and in our heads. That brings me to Francisco Goya. I fear that the term Romanticism is misleading in a way that gives you a sense of dreaminess, possibly similar to what we saw in the Rococo era. While Romanticism may have covered dreamscapes, for Goya, they were closer to nightmares. Goya was a Spanish painter born in 1746. Early in his career, we certainly see a unique style of painting, but the content is relatively similar to other artists around the same time. We have our people, we have natural surroundings, saturated colors. But if you were to look through his paintings chronologically, you would be able to see the fluctuations in his mental health. In 1814, we see a new style of his emerge altogether with a piece titled The 3rd of May, 1808. This oil on canvas depicts, quote, the indiscriminate killing of civilians. These executions were carried out by French soldiers under Napoleon Bonaparte's orders. I would also like to clarify the events took place in 1808. That is in the title. The painting was completed in 1814. This piece has an accompanying painting called The 2nd of May, 1808. And each of these acted as both a celebration of the end of French occupation in Spain, as well as a memorial to those lost in the battles. The 3rd of May, 1808 was a revolutionary painting for a revolutionary time. Although we've seen political paintings before, we have never studied something as emotionally charged as this. Goya waved goodbye to restrained, beautiful scenes depicting honor and sacrifice, and confronted his viewership with the horror and chaos of war. This emphasis on emotional force would go on to create Romanticism. This piece hangs in the Museo Nacional del Prado in Madrid, Spain. Our next piece originates from the Greek myth of Cronus devouring his children so that none would usurp him. And it was actually somewhat of a common subject for a painting. However, Goya would again radicalize the depiction of this act in a piece called Saturn Devouring His Son. And yes, I first saw this piece over 10 years ago and I did have nightmares about it. Skipping over the ways this depiction is different from any other depiction of the same subject, the most interesting thing about this painting is that we can assume it was never meant to be seen by the public. This is one of 14 pieces that Goya painted on the walls of his home between 1819 and 1823. After they were found, these came to be known as the Black Paintings because of their disturbing imagery. Historians theorize that these works were the product of a mind grappling with years spent witnessing war, occupation, and the Spanish Inquisition. I find this one particularly disturbing because of the frenzied look on Saturn's face and the clamp that he has on the child. In the original story, Cronus's children were swallowed whole and ended up surviving after being rescued, but obviously, in Goya's version, it is clear that the child is not coming back from this. I hope that's clear. After 70 years on the walls of the home, the Black Paintings were transferred to canvas and had deteriorated severely, which is where this painting gets even worse. It is speculated that Saturn may have had an erection in the original, and that the detail was lost due to dilapidation, possibly by request of the current owners of the painting. Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I know someone is going to think that I made this up. Here is the citation. Now, I won't pretend to know whether this painting was a reflection of how Goya saw the world or how he saw himself. I think it's safe to guess why these paintings were not intended for a public audience, but never say never. Saturn, devouring his son, currently lives in the Museo Nacional del Prado with the 3rd of May, 1808. I have a short story for you if you'll bear with me. The last museum that I worked at, it was raining out. One of our curators came up to me and said, I have a guest here. Will you just take her bags out to the Uber for her? I have to leave out of the side entrance, but I'll just meet her around the corner. If you can just get her bags in the Uber and make sure she's good. So we get out in the rain, the Uber pulls up, and this lady, I'm kind of looking at this lady, waiting for her to give me some instruction, waiting for the Uber driver. I'm not really sure what to do. And she and I are both getting drenched out here. And she looks at me and says, the driver will take the bags. Run away. So I went back into the museum. And the next day I was laughing about this kind of with our curator and telling her this story. And our curator says, well, you know who that was, right? And I did not know. And she said, that was the leading expert in the world on Francisco Goya. So, great lady, really funny, love the energy. No, hope that lightens up this video. Okay. Truly though, I understand Goya to be one of the most heartbreaking artists that we have studied so far. I feel like some of his works just pour out the difficulties he was having with his mental health. And we looked at a small fraction of his work because he produced so many paintings, but I hope you at least got something out of today's video. Next week, we look at an artist whose works collided with Nazi Germany, and as always, thank you for watching.